I was secretly married to Maria for 7 years. She just got promoted to director. People were gossiping that the male orthopedic doctor was her husband. She didn't deny it. She blocked my promotions multiple times, always giving me the dirtiest, most tiring jobs. She and the male doctor were always together, even sharing a drink at the celebration party. I passed out in the operating room, and they had to use CPR and a defibrillator on me. At the same time, she and the male doctor were caught underdressed during a DUI check. In those critical 4 minutes, I narrowly escaped death. The doctor asked her, who rushed over, "Are you his emergency contact?" Calmly, I answered, "No, I barely know her." That day, I was operating on an elderly patient and had been on my feet since morning. The circulating nurse fell ill, so I was roped in to help last minute. I worked from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m., only having consumed a bag of glucose. After the surgery, I dragged my exhausted legs out, and then everything went dark. I vaguely saw my colleagues rush to me, panic etched on their faces. My only thought was, "Maria, you can't hide this anymore. Justin, get the defibrillator." They shouted, calling my name. After CPR showed no signs of improvement, Fiona asked, "Is Maria's phone ringing?" With such a big incident, of course, they'd try to reach Maria. That afternoon, the hospital was having a celebration party for a research project. It was also a big moment for the youngest orthopedic doctor, Philip. It was his first time joining the pharmaceutical research group, and he did well. So, of course, there was a party. Anyone not in surgery attended. Someone whispered, "Can't reach her. Maria isn't answering." Call Philip then. At this point, who cares? Either one of them can answer. I lay there motionless, a lingering feeling of bitterness washing over me. Maria and I joined the hospital at the same time, but we kept our relationship secret because of policies against spouses in the same department. I agreed to hide it, never imagining it would last 7 years. For over a year now, she and Philip were inseparable. Even in the cafeteria, they sat together, laughing. Even the cleaning lady asked me with mystery, "I heard Maria is married. Is it to Philip?" She never denied it, letting rumors spread like wildfire. Before surgery, I glanced at the celebration photos. Philip was smiling as he fed her wine, and she smiled so wide that crow's feet appeared. She never drank. She once said a surgeon shouldn't drink. Fiona's voice was still at my ear, asking, "Who's Justin's emergency contact?" My phone, vibrating in my pocket, repeatedly flashed the word wife. Nurse Ben picked up my phone and answered. On the other end was an unfamiliar voice. "Are you Maria's family? This is the traffic police." He handed the phone to Fiona, confused. "The traffic police say Maria isn't cooperating with a DUI test." "Maria? Why call Justin's phone?" Perhaps they noticed the word wife displayed on the screen. The room fell eerily silent. The officer's voice was clear. "They're at the station now. A family member should come in." Fiona hesitated, then said, "That's impossible. He's undergoing resuscitation for a heart attack." The line went quiet, and after a moment, they hung up. During those critical 4 minutes, my colleagues saved my life. As they monitored my heartbeat in the hospital room, my awareness gradually returned. Ben, dripping with sweat, his hands slightly shaking, said, "Justin, get some rest. I'll stay with you tonight." I couldn't speak, feeling all my strength drained away, the cold fluid coursing through my veins making me drowsy. But my hearing was sharp in the still hospital room. Outside, I could hear the young nurses whispering. My friend said Maria and a man were caught in a car, clothes disheveled. It must be Philip, right? They left the celebration together. Tears escaped my eyes, wishing I'd misheard. But over the past year, there were many moments of disappointment. On my birthday, Maria came home late at night, exhausted, handing me a decorated box. "Happy birthday." When she leaned closer for a kiss, I noticed a trace of men's hair wax by her ear. Turned my lips cold, I was stunned. At the hospital, Philip was always dressed sharply. No one else compared. Arrogant yet charismatic, Maria always praised him as the hospital's finest. Look at how confident he is. What patient wouldn't trust him? No wonder people thought they were married. She never missed a chance to favor him publicly. I slowly closed my eyes. The urge to leave her was stronger than ever. Maria rushed in at dawn, the door swinging open. Behind her were the on-duty doctor and nurses, and Philip. He stood in perfectly tailored pants and a shirt, his gaze distant, casting a wary look in my direction. Maria's face was covered in sweat, frowning, her skirt wrinkled. Her steps were unsteady, eyes full of mixed emotions. I glanced away, feeling only cold snowflakes falling inside me. It reminded me of that winter when she walked through the snow, and I silently followed behind. I've seen this look countless times, but it felt different now. Back in med school, I often fainted due to low blood sugar. When she dashed down 5 flights to find me, her eyes were filled with worry and care. Our classmate Joan teased her, "Why study medicine? With your speed, you should run track." I saw that same concern in her eyes once again when a hysterical patient accidentally injured Philip. She rushed to his side like this. His arm was hurt, but she hurriedly supported him to the treatment room. The nurses whispered behind her back. Never seen the director so flustered. Now she seemed flustered again. Her eyes locked onto me as soon as she entered. But I couldn't tell if she was worried about me or something else. She leaned close. "Justin." I turned my head away. Her faint breath of alcohol made me nauseous. Fiona walked in from outside, holding a signed brain scan form. "Make way." She glanced at the data on the monitor, then looked straight at Maria. "Are you his emergency contact?" Her tone had a hint of mockery. All these years, I've been like the go-to person at the nurse's station. Wherever I'm needed, that's where I go, doing the toughest and dirtiest jobs, while others get the promotions. Even Fiona couldn't stand it last time and offered to help adjust for me. Without a second thought, Maria refused. If everyone gets promoted, who will guide the newcomers? Now, faced with the question, she felt a bit embarrassed. Just as she was about to nod, I turned my head away. My tone was unusually calm. "No, we're not close." Maria didn't notice anything unusual about me. She just glanced my way, then signed the form. "He doesn't have any underlying conditions, but it's best to check thoroughly." Fiona walked out expressionless. At the door, as if on purpose, she suddenly spoke. "Everyone can leave the ER. Philip too, we don't need orthopedics for this." Philip's originally stern face turned pale. He pressed his lips together and gave me a deep look before turning to leave. Maria rolled up her sleeves, sat down with a sigh of relief, adjusting the sheets. "Ben, you handle your tasks. I've got this." Even I had to admire her composure, her ability to stay calm under pressure. By tomorrow, the whole hospital would know she and I are actually married. She's been lying for 7 years. Never thought it would be exposed like this. Ben's expression was indifferent. As he walked out, closing the door, he said, "Justin, if you need anything, call me. I won't go far." With just Maria and I left in the room, she glanced again at the monitoring data. She began speaking like she was explaining, but never looked at me. I drank too much and dozed off for a bit in the car. Didn't hear the phone. I stayed silent, my throat dry and painful as if cut by blades. She hesitated. The car was parked on the side of the road. I was in the passenger seat. No drunk driving. Her voice got weaker, less confident. I slowly spoke. "I'm not the traffic police." She paused. "Justin, it's not what you think." I almost wanted to laugh, even though I wasn't thinking anything. In those 4 minutes, I crossed the line between life and death, seemed to cross my last hope for her too. Lying here for hours, my mind replayed the endless hardship of these past years. Time spent watching the clock during vacations, each time with her absence. Her medical skills and ethics winning praise, climbing the ranks. When she became an attending physician, the former director relocated, policies changed. But she said, publishing this immediately would feel too deliberate once he's gone. Later, when she contended for deputy director, then director, I couldn't bring myself to mention going public. I didn't bring it up, and she assumed it wasn't important. Now she seemed relieved. Well, they'll all know eventually. Even teetering on the edge of life or death, she still wasn't thinking about me. I was hospitalized for a week, with Maria by my side the whole time. At her request, underwent chest pain and ECG exams, all thoroughly. For all the tests, she followed closely, seemingly attentive and caring. I also heard from Ben that Philip had taken leave. After all test results showed no abnormalities, I moved to a regular ward. Once settled, Maria stood. "I'm going to see Fiona." She leaned over, lowered her voice. "Don't overthink. I need to visit for both business and personal reasons." She explained that Philip had hinted feelings towards her earlier, blaming her for not responding directly. A rare find, someone useful finally cultivated in orthopedics. Her explanation seemed more like she was trying to convince herself. I just watched her indecisiveness, hesitation with a blank expression. Finally, she seemed to make up her mind. "I'm going to see him and clear things up." When she leaned in to kiss, I turned away with a cold face. She froze. "Justin, there are so many unavoidable things in my position you need to understand." I nodded. "After leaving the hospital, I'll resign." She was silent for a moment. "Okay, your health isn't suited for overworking anyway. Before resigning, I have 2 years of 28 days worth of leave to take first." She hesitated. "Now everyone knows we're married. If you're resigning, why take the leave? Then let's get divorced before I resign." I said it calmly while finally feeling a weight lift off me. Her face went pale. Straightening. She looked at me in disbelief. "What did you say? Divorce?" "Maria." She tightened her grip on her car keys, her cheeks tense. "Stop, it's a joke for old couples to play." I curled my lips into a smile. "We won't be for much longer. Go visit the patient. Sign when you return." She hastily tossed back. "I don't agree." With a cold face, she left without the slightest hesitation. Calmly, I got up slowly, pulled out the 4, heading downstairs for discharge. Changed into plain clothes and packed my things at the nurse's station. Ben, with red eyes, looked at me. "Justin, are you really resigning?" I didn't answer, just smiled, handing him a backup bag. "Keep it as a memento." Waiting for a car at the door, Fiona hurried over in her lab coat. She looked me up and down, frowning. "Taking a break to be a stay-at-home husband?" I chuckled. "Still haven't thanked you for saving my life." She scratched her head, suddenly asking, "Remember the old guy from surgery that day?" She said he was a retired leader from the province. "Heard about you collapsing outside he sent people twice to check on you." She fished a note from her pocket, handing it to me. "When you get out, at least contact him. Give the old man some peace of mind." I took it, put it in my bag, said nothing more, and got into the car. From graduation, I've been so busy that suddenly having dozens of days of vacation leaves me a bit lost. While packing at home, my phone kept ringing. Staring at those 2 jumping characters, I felt nothing. It's like after going through life and death, everything about love and sadness seems insignificant. I pulled out an old drafted divorce agreement, signed my name, placed it on the dining table, turned around with my backpack, dragging my suitcase as I left. Closed the door behind me, like leaving behind years of feelings for Maria. I hung up the call came repeatedly from her. I only sent her 2 messages. "Sign the divorce papers. I don't want this to go to court. Without Philip, you wouldn't have become the dean. Everyone knows it." Ever since Maria invited Philip to join, I knew something was up. She'd been stuck as vice dean for ages, missing a right-hand man and connections to pave the way. I saw Philip's paper in a medical journal. The mentor listed was none other than the famous Professor Calvin. Look a bit deeper and the family ties are pretty obvious. Maria's ambitions have always been in plain sight. She never clarified her relationship with Philip. Maybe she just let people assume. I was always the odd man out. I booked a flight back to my small hometown up north. My elderly parents are afraid of flying long journeys aren't ideal. I haven't been home in years. I kept saving my leave, but every time I'd planned to take it, Maria would block me. She always had an excuse. "I can't step away right now, just wait." Now that our ties are severed, there's no more waiting. The plane landed late at night. My mom sleepily opened the door and cried as soon as she saw me. My dad shuffled into the kitchen, wiping tears as he went. I lay on my childhood bed, exhausted but clear-headed. Marrying far away was a gamble. Sharing ups and downs was another. I gambled fully and I lost with acceptance. The bustling morning markets in the northern town and the gentle falling snow make me feel at peace. Except Ben keeps messaging me. I know Philip returned to the department after I was discharged. Always looking stern. Heard she's come out of Maria's office with red eyes a few times. So seeing a friend request from Ben didn't surprise me at all. I declined it, but he went ahead and called me. Justin, she's not gonna ask you back. Let it go. I know, Maria just messages me the same thing every day. Justin, now's not the time to get divorced. 10 days later, I was on a train to Tibet. My parents couldn't help but shed tears as they dropped me off at the station. My usually stoic dad patted my shoulder. You didn't do anything wrong. No need to reflect or be sad. I nodded, smiling with eyes squinted in a grin, waving goodbye as I went through the gate. Scenery passed serenely by the window, and I snapped photos frequently. My social media's almost like a travel diary now. Fiona likes every post, often commenting. A couple of tears of envy. Another day in front of the operating table for me. Maria isn't even my pinned chat anymore. Her messages got buried under endless shares from colleagues. Always the same simple 4 words. Take care of yourself. She called once, her voice shaky with the wind. Justin, I dreamt about you during my nap. Calmly, I looked at the distant snowy mountains, at the bells swaying nearby in the breeze. Her voice and words felt so foreign now. Remember how we said we'd go there together back in med school? We had many chances to travel together, but she always prioritized her career. Hesitantly, she said, we haven't even had our wedding. We were too broke after graduation. Excitedly went to get the marriage license instead. Promised to have a grand wedding later, with a diamond ring to replace my soda can tab ring. 7 years have passed. I'm finally at peace with her betrayal. She deeply sighed, apologizing. It's all my fault. Yes, it is. She seemed stunned, taking a moment to reply softly. I've signed the papers. A weight lifted off my heart. I chuckled with relief. Then here's to Maria's bright future and career success. No reply from her, just heavy breathing over the phone. I vaguely heard the door open, Philip's cheerful voice in the background. Dad said we're getting married next month. Maria hurriedly hung up. I chuckled, deleting her contact. As I pressed delete, a message from her flashed and disappeared before I could read it. A few days later, by a lively bonfire, I got an e-invitation from Philip. No need to attend, just sharing my happiness. The invite was a photo of them snuggled together. Maria's lips were pressed tight, her gaze elsewhere. I left after my leave was up, back to the hospital to resign. Fiona leaned against the door with her hands in her pockets, watching me pack into a big box. She coughed tactically. John wants you to see him. I asked offhand, which John? She yanked me by the collar, dragging me to a single ward in the inpatient department. Entering, everyone turned their heads towards me. The elderly man on the hospital bed smiled kindly. Then it hit me Fiona had mentioned this was the man who had surgery the day I fainted. I nervously greeted him. The tall middle-aged man beside him spoke up. Justin, did you finish resigning? Interested in being a private nurse? Before I could refuse, he glanced quickly at the elder on the bed. Name your terms, I bet you need a good job. Fiona nudged me discreetly. Quickly, I realized this could be an opportunity for me. 3 days later, I stood by the hospital entrance as a private nurse. Maria was flattering John as she sent him off. Spying me, she looked slightly taken aback. John smiled warmly at me, then looked back at Maria. Anything you need, let Justin know first. He implied, follow doctor's orders. Listen to him. That night, an unfamiliar number called. Maria's voice was notably weary. Justin, what's going on? I was honest. Got a new job. You know the ward he's in, the visitors he gets, he's not ordinary. I couldn't help but laugh. To me, he's just a patient. I didn't let her continue lecturing, just hung up. Please meet John's son, a middle-aged man who works at a medical research institute. He handed me the access card and casually squashed my curiosity. You were the main caregiver when my dad was in the hospital, right? He praised you a lot. John's son is in the same field as me, and we're about the same age. He said, my younger brother passed away from a sudden illness a few years back. Dad used to listen to him the most. He advised me to take care of John just like I did at the hospital. He added, I've noticed he's just like an old child now. Your words carry more weight than the doctor's. But he didn't tell me that John loves eating melons. Maria, with Philip on her arm, came over to personally invite John to their wedding. I was handing over medicine. Putting down the glass, I held it out to John. He grimaced, I'll take it later. I told him sternly, you're already half an hour late. Maria, in between, was saying, John, how about next week? Philip watched me with a haughty look. I pretended I didn't notice and carried on since he wasn't really part of my circle. John sighed, resigned, and popped the medicine into his mouth. After swallowing, he spoke slowly, Justin, are you going? I instantly widened my eyes. Now's not the time to ask me that. John's eyes darted between Philip and me, grinning like an old fox. Maria, this is your second marriage, right? Maria looked suddenly awkward, sweat forming on her forehead. John? John stopped smiling. Having a wedding for a second marriage? Aren't you afraid of being laughed at? He wobbly stood up, and I quickly supported his arm. He looked back at Philip, your dad's old and confused, agreeing to such a match. John didn't agree, but he didn't say no either. After work, the driver dropped me at the alley's entrance. From afar, I saw Maria leaning on her car. Who knows how long she'd been waiting. I walked past with a cold face, not intending to stop. She hesitantly followed. Justin, could you persuade John to come? She couldn't even finish her own sentence but was looking at me expectantly. I stopped. I'm just a caregiver, Maria. You're asking too much. She instinctively reached out for me, but I dodged her touch immediately. Her hand stiffened, her expression darkened. Philip's invited quite a few people. Though John has retired, he still has connections and influence. Networking, maintaining relationships, having someone to rely on. I couldn't help but find it amusing. Even her wedding had an agenda. I accidentally looked up at her. Maria, you're already the director. How much higher do you need to climb? She clearly understood my implication, her face weary. You don't get it. At this level, I can't afford mistakes. I have to cover all bases. Having strong backers is always beneficial. She hesitated. At first, John was giving me some respect. But now, I don't know. She quickly glanced at me but didn't finish. I let out a dry laugh. Maria, you think too highly of me. What could a little nurse like me change? With that, I turned to leave. She raised her voice suddenly. I know you hate me, but if I don't climb, others will trample me. Her voice sounded a bit desolate. We're the same. Came from ordinary backgrounds, studied hard for years. What chance do we have without fighting for it? What's love worth, Justin? Us staying together won't make things better. I didn't look back at her. Her words from years ago in medical school rang in my ears. Just being a good doctor with a clear conscience should be enough. But it isn't. Her desire is insatiable. She was right. Love is useless to her, intangible, not a stepping stone for her success. Fiona quit. When she came to see me, she looked relaxed. She was a major player in the key department and a future candidate for the deputy director. I looked at her in surprise, and she shrugged. Not exactly quitting without a plan. I've secured a position at the provincial hospital, starting next month. It's indeed a better spot, but I distinctly remember her saying she didn't like the atmosphere there. She noticed my doubt and took a couple of steps forward. Lowering her voice, Justin, I'm only telling you this. She said, consider it bad luck or a stroke of luck. Exhausted from surgery, she fell asleep leaning against the medicine cabinet in the pharmacy, and overheard the pharmacists whispering, the hospital's going to face a storm, and if I stay, I might be the scapegoat. The gaps in the drug procurement and funding paths were unimaginable. Fiona patted my shoulder with a smile. Not that it's right to say, but your divorce timing was spot on. She mentioned taking a break to travel. You have no idea how jealous those workaholics were of you recently. Shortly after she left, Maria visited twice. John avoided her and subtly told me, better to meet Maria less privately, just to avoid suspicion. I didn't ask much, but even a fool could sense a storm brewing. The only one likely immersed in happiness might be Philip. Ben would vent occasionally. He sticks to Maria like glue, not caring who sees. I couldn't care less, just listening out of necessity. A large number of people come to see John daily. I had to keep an eye on him, ensuring he didn't sneak a drink or two when I wasn't looking. Each time I stopped him, he'd laugh it off. Pointing at me, he'd tell visitors, once I'm all better, take him to work at your hospital. I knew he was trying to secure a future for me. After all, I couldn't be a caregiver forever. Before I knew it, the night before the wedding arrived. Before bed, I received a message from Maria. Actually, hiding it isn't so bad. At least you are still my husband. I chuckled, resisting the urge to curse. Her call came through. Justin, I'm downstairs. Can we meet? I didn't plan to go, but she persistently called many times. If you don't come down, I'll just wait here. She was in her car, smoking, one hand holding her head. Upon seeing me, she leaned over and opened the passenger side door. I looked at her coldly. Get to the point. Cut the crap. She paused, then gave a bitter smile, rubbing her temples. She pushed the car door open, got out, took a deep drag from her cigarette, then tossed it away. She took a deep breath and looked straight at me. Do you still blame me for not making our relationship public? I ignored her. This wasn't the time to talk about that. She went on talking. Philip's father's medical projects need a lot of funding. A few years ago, when she was just a senior doctor, she got deeply involved. She used her position at the hospital to connect Calvin with pharmaceutical companies. In return, Calvin used his contacts and research to help her climb the ladder. She lowered her head. The only mistake I made was letting Philip into the hospital. She never guessed that a young, flamboyant doctor would fall for her so hard. Calvin saw everything clearly and subtly pushed things along. Maria let out a bitter laugh, leaning against the car, not daring to look at me. I kept it a secret because I never wanted things to get this far. She said ever since our relationship was suddenly exposed, Calvin had been pressuring her. I don't want a divorce, but you're pushing me. They're pushing me too. She mumbled like she was the only innocent one now. I had to sign the papers and I had to marry him. Her face darkened, her smile more painful than a tear. That's why I say love is useless. Justin, love is nothing in the face of all these tangled interests. I stared at her, feeling more disappointed in her than ever before. Maria, you're pathetic. As I turned away, she tried in vain to grab my arm. But before she could touch me, her hand dropped weakly. I was woken up by Ben's phone call in the morning. He sounded unusually excited. Justin, I'm at the wedding. I frowned, not really in the mood to hear him. Maria didn't show up. I don't think she's coming. He yelled for me to turn on the TV to watch the news. After hanging up, he sent me dozens of photos from the wedding. The TV blared with noise. The former finance director of the city hospital has officially accused the hospital's director, Maria, of using her position to profit others in drug procurement, fund allocations, taking huge kickbacks, and misusing funds for fake data in drug experiments. I looked at the pictures in the chat box. Philip in his tux, looking back in a panic. The place was in chaos. His father seemed tense as he was taken away. Flower petals and ribbons scattered everywhere. I heard Maria was taken away while in her wedding dress. I thought back to her feeling lost and helpless outside my building a few hours earlier. Perhaps she already had a sense of what was coming. I gathered myself, splashed cold water on my face, and headed to work. John sat in the lounge chair, soaking up the sun. Hearing my footsteps, he opened his eyes. Seen the news? I nodded and handed him his medication. For once, he took it without fuss. Someone's coming for me soon. Can you hold them off? He said it casually like he knew they were coming. Before noon, Philip rushed in. He had changed into a regular suit that didn't match with his sneakers. Seeing me, his eyes turned cold, and he raised his hand, ready to storm in. I stopped him. John isn't seeing anyone today. He glared at me. I have to see him, acting tough, but his eyes were red, tears brimming. I sighed, "Don't make me call security." His shoulders slumped, and he let go. "Justin, only John can save her and my dad." He wouldn't beg, but the desperation was written all over him. I pushed him out, face cold. "No one can save her. Don't waste your energy." When things fall apart, people in key positions offered confessions willingly. Maria's crimes were stacking up, but she wouldn't say a word. Calvin's involvement dragged Philip down quickly too. Ben mentioned it on the phone, clearly concerned. They say even a tiger won't eat its cubs. But Philip's dad threw everything on him. He said Philip had been looking uneasy, running around. In the end, he was taken away straight from the clinic. Apparently, his dad confessed that Philip's thesis was fake, and the clinical fraud in the research was all his doing. I knew once these things were investigated, the truth would come out. Calvin just wanted to delay the investigation. Ben scoffed. Even Fiona says the old professor is just buying time for his contacts. But with the whole system collapsing, who'd dare get involved? John's big birthday party was over half a month later. During the party, someone offered me a position at the hospital. I politely declined with a smile. John turned serious. "Why didn't you take such a good opportunity?" I told him I'd already promised Fiona. She found it really stifling at the state hospital and wanted to start her own practice. John paused for a moment. "If she's going to start her own thing, you should give it a shot." A few months later, I said goodbye to John. With the decent earnings I made there, I partnered up with Fiona. Everything was starting from scratch. Ben came bursting in, all excited. Reporting for duty. The details of Maria's case were becoming clear, and she asked to see me. Fiona gave my shoulder a pat. "Don't be shy, laugh out loud when you're there." In the meeting room, I could barely recognize her. She had lost so much weight, her cheeks were sunken, and her hair was mostly gray. Not even 40. She looked as though she had aged overnight. She glanced up at me slightly, then quickly looked away, feeling guilty. "I thought you wouldn't want to see me." I pulled out a chair to sit down, looking at her calmly. At that moment, I really wanted to ask her if it was worth it. But I didn't. I just gave a light chuckle, our last meeting in this life. Her shoulders shrank, and she forced a smile. "Not that dramatic, maybe another decade or so." I stopped smiling. "To me, it's as if you're gone." Her eyes darted towards me in panic. Her lips trembled slightly. My parents, if you have time, please take care of them. After all, we were married for so many years." I shook my head. "No time, you reap what you sow." She lowered her head weakly. "Justin, I know you hate me." "Hate?" During the years we were together, maybe I did hate her. But after experiencing those 4 minutes of life and death, I'd let go of all feelings towards her. No love, no hate. Facing her without any weight. "You shouldn't have asked me here. I just think you deserve it." No sympathy, no pity. Sure, during our years of love, there were countless promises and dreams for the future. But at that moment of finality, it was all dust to dust. It seemed only then she completely crumbled. She slumped in the chair, head deeply buried. "Justin, you're not me. You can't understand my circumstances." I couldn't help but laugh. "Maria, there are thousands of paths in life, and you chose what you thought was a shortcut." Her hands trembled slightly, her voice shaking. "But my feelings for you were always real." I got up, not wanting to look at her anymore. "As you said, feelings are useless." A few years later, Fiona's hospital was gaining some fame in the city. As a partner, I spent most of my time advancing my studies. She'd call me now and then, never forgetting to slyly add, "You're so diligent, not planning to jump ship, are you?" I'd laugh and close my book, telling her to stop daydreaming. "I'm waiting for my dividends." Somehow in our chats, she hesitated and said, "Have you heard? Maria's dead." My hand holding the phone paused, and I couldn't picture her face anymore. Fiona said maybe those years in prison wore her down. She sharpened a toothbrush, opened her own artery. When John told me, it sent chills down my spine. She was ruthless with herself. I couldn't picture the scene, just felt her news was like hearing from a different lifetime. Fiona kept asking, Philip still has a couple of years left, right? I didn't respond. Let's hang up, talking about irrelevant people. She gave a wry smile. Just came to mind, so I mentioned it. Hey, when are you coming back? I hung up and looked out the library window. Willow branches swayed in the wind, reminding me of the chimes moved by the breeze back then. The distant snowy mountains seemed forever etched in my memory. But that state of mind was long forgotten. Those few minutes between life and death, and that rare vacation, felt like intervals in my life. Leaving hopelessness behind completely allowed me to move forward with ease.